Alrighty, folks, welcome to this third episode of Brownsville Live. And in today's episode, we're going to continue our look into Black Friday deals. And this time, we're going to be looking at some of the Black Friday specials going on at Walmart. Just like Amazon beforehand, they've actually put out some Black Friday deals way before Friday. That way, for those that don't want to face the long lines or waking up early or camping out the day before, you can take advantage of actually purchasing some of these products at the store or even online. Like I told you last night, I personally don't do a whole lot of Black Friday shopping per se. I don't go out there and face the crowds or anything like that. I basically do most of my shopping online for the most part. Just a few minor things that I still have to go out from time to time. But we'll go ahead and get started here. We're going to switch over into our screen where we're actually connected to Walmart. For today's episode, we actually have a Facebook live comment window active. So if y'all have some questions or you'd like for me to look at something in particular, or if you've got a particular product that you're interested in getting but you don't know what to get, feel free to toss in a question there. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So basically, Walmart's got some deals. I know that they've put out some Black Friday specials out there. Let me go ahead and click. Hopefully, my internet connection here is working today. I've had some issues. So we'll see how it behaves today. But, one of the very first things I talked about yesterday at length is televisions. And obviously, TVs are very popular right now as far as items to get. And, if you're looking for a TV for either the living room or the bedroom or something like that, I've seen some pretty good deals out there. Um, I spoke a little bit about smart TVs last night, and one of the things that I mentioned was that when you buy a TV from Samsung or LG or some of those other even Vizio, they are smart TVs, but they come limited with the amount of streaming applications that you can actually run on those devices. Typically, you'll get the standard apps like Hulu and Netflix and Sling and maybe Vudu, maybe Apple TV. But if you really want to take advantage of a slew of streaming channels, those TVs are going to limit you to what you can actually watch. So, that's the problem with those TVs. They're not going to allow you to install more apps. But there is an alternative. Obviously, there's two alternatives. One is obviously buying a Roku device. Roku, by far, is the streaming device that lets you have an unlimited amount of channels, all different kinds of channels, streaming channels. Um, and of course, the second device that is pretty popular is the Fire Stick. The Fire Stick comes in second as far as for a streaming device. Then you've got, of course, Apple TV, and obviously there you're tied to the Apple ecosystem, and you've got probably 35, maybe 40 channels at most on those devices, and you're not pretty much allowed to install anything without Apple's approval. So that's the backdraw to some of those devices. I'm very big on Roku. I have like 5 or 6 of them. So I know what I'm telling you when you've got that flexibility. But short of a streaming device, because that just represents something extra to connect to the TV. Plus, it takes an HDMI port that you could use for something else. The other option is to buy a TV with Roku capability. And there are a couple of TVs out there that actually provide that. In fact, right now there's one at Walmart here for $398. Um, it's an ONN. Honestly, I'm not really sure, the, how good those ONN TVs are, but I can tell you that I bought an ONN Studio Light, and it works great. I mean, that's what actually is actually lighting me right now. So, this TV by ONN actually a 70-inch TV, and it's 4K ultra high definition LED, and it's for $398. Um, Obviously, that's pretty cheap for a 70-inch TV. I mean, it's not a Samsung, it's not an LG, it's not a Vizio, but for the price, you can't really beat that. I mean, $398 for a 70-inch TV. I mean, who would have thought a year ago that we would be looking at these kind of prices? And the plus to that is that it has Roku built inside, which means that you can add all these streaming apps you'd want. Now, some of you may wonder, well, why do you need to stream? Well, one of the things that you can do is that you can actually cut the cord. I think most of you have heard the term cutting the cord. And what that basically means is that instead of paying for cable TV, you're going to now stream all your channels. And your locals are going to actually come off of off the air high definition antenna. So you get your locals off an antenna, and you would get your cable channels or the channels that you watch on the streaming device. Now let me tell you something about the high definition channels, the off the air channels coming off that antenna. The resolution is superb. It's not like in the old days when you had rabbit ears and you got a couple of channels, analog channels with static. That's not the way it is today. So you could save easily $60 off of your cable bill just by keeping your internet but doing away with your cable. And I'm telling you this from experience because I've done it. I do not have cable TV. I am a 100% cut the cord, off the air, streamer household. We do not have cable. What I have done is I've looked at what I use for cable TV, like if I want to look at Fox News or CNN, is I actually subscribe to Sling TV for like $20 a month, and I get a slew of channels, cable channels for that. So that's another option for some of you out there that may be paying quite a bit of money for cable TV. You could go 100% streaming off the air with an antenna, and you'll be as good to go. I mean, honestly, for most of us that have been cable customers, and I'm not knocking cable. I mean, that is the industry that I've come from. I worked for the cable industry for 4 years. I continued to do some work for the cable industry, so I could tell you firsthand that it is expensive, and I'm not completely against them. It's just that it is expensive, and there's ways to save on cost. So anyway, enough about why I think everybody should be a cord cutter. But anyway, $70. A 70-inch TV for $398. I think that's quite a bargain if you look at that. Now if you're and that TV is probably something you would have in your family room. Typically, 55, anything greater than 55 inches. It's not something typically you'd find in a bedroom, but in a family room or a living room, that may be a good place for something like that. For the bedroom or a kid's room, I mean, really the most appropriate size is a 32-inch, all the way up to a 42-inch. For a bedroom, and they've got several deals on there as well. Obviously, ONN comes back again. They've got this 720p Roku Smart TV for like $149. Scepter's got some here, a 40-inch TV. Uh, they've even got a 55-inch over there for $248. Once you start comparing these inches over here, you're kind of better off going with that 70-inch for a couple of more bucks. So, it's just something to kind of think about. But let's keep on looking and see what else there is out there. Hisense also has some Roku TVs out there for $224. There's even a little 24-inch 720p with Roku Smart TV if you're looking for something for maybe the garage or something. So they've got some pretty good deals there from what I can see. Let's see here. The internet's a little slow today. You've got like Hisense over here with like a 65-inch for around $448. It's 4K Ultra HD Roku Smart TV as well. I think you can't really beat that 398 70-inch over there by ONN. And of course, for those looking for some better quality TVs, I mean, obviously you've got Vizio out there as well for a 70-inch for about $100 more. You can get yourself a quality 70-inch Ultra 4K TV from Vizio, and but once again, you're limited with the amount of apps that it's going to allow you to view on the TV. There's a 55-inch 398 from TCL. As I mentioned last night, I'm a big fan of TCL. I actually have one. Actually, do I? Yeah, I just have one, and I have that out in my patio. But mine's like a 40-inch TV that I've got out there with the Roku, and it works well. I mean, it's been out there for 3 years. It's been out there in the dust and the rain. Well, not the rain because it's a covered patio, but there's a lot of dust. There's a lot of spiders. Spiders love to get into those TVs. They like to make it their home. So every once in a while you'll see little spider webs and stuff like that. But even with all that, the dust and so forth, it's still kicking. It's still out there. I chose to buy a TCL at the time, honestly, because it was cheap. And it gave me the ability to watch Roku. So for me, it was a great deal, and it's worked out pretty well. Excuse me for drinking water, but when I'm going on and on, my throat tends to dry up, and I start sounding a little hoarse. I'm not really sure why that happens. It's happened lately quite a bit, so I'm having to sip water as we go through the show. For higher quality TVs, obviously you know that Samsung is top of the line. There's no doubt that when you're looking at a Samsung, you're going to get a higher quality product. And obviously, resolution's a big thing. I've seen Samsungs outperform any other kind of TV. They just look really crisp and really sharp. And you can get a 60-inch at Walmart right now for like $528. And if you want to go all the way up to a QLED 4K TV, you can get one for about $1,000. There's even an 82-inch. Now, I didn't realize that. Wow, there's an 82-inch TV by Samsung, and that one's 4K, and it's it's 4K Crystal UHD LED Smart TV with HDR. That's not bad for an 82-inch TV. So you may want to look into something like that. Like I said, you can never go wrong with Samsung. There's no doubt about that. They've got an 86-inch out there as well. Look at that for $1,600. I mean, if you can afford it, if you've got money to burn and it's not an issue, go for as large as you can go. In my opinion, if you can afford it, Get yourself the largest TV you can afford. Uh, uh, I know I would if I could. So they've got some pretty good deals out there at Walmart for TVs if anybody is looking into a TV this coming week. So there's some pretty good deals. Let's look at some Apple products as well. Actually, let's go ahead and look at some cell phones. I noticed earlier there were some pretty good deals on cell phones. Um, for anybody out there looking to um, is looking for a cell phone, they've got some pretty good deals right now. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of those. I've seen a lot of products out here on this site for refurbished phones, and I want to talk to you a little bit about refurbished versus brand new. You know, there's always skepticism when it comes to a refurbished product. Uh, you know, refurbished means that the device was pre-owned by somebody. But you know, most companies, including Apple and some of the others, have quality standards when it comes to provide to when it comes to pre-owned or refurbished phones. It's not just grabbing the phone from the pile, cleaning it up and putting it back in the field. That's not what these refurbished products are. Apple, as well as other companies, when they talk about refurbished, the refurbished product has to be almost new. That means that blemishes, that means that anything wrong with it, when that box is opened, it has to act and function and look just like a brand new phone. So there really isn't, or there shouldn't be an issue or any kind of skepticism when it comes to a refurbished product, because the quality standards today when it comes to the refurbishment process has to be basically just as new. Uh, so, you know, they've got some pretty good deals out there right now with some refurbished products. I mean, we've got some Samsung Galaxy phones out there that are, you know, pretty cheap. I mean, they're refurbished, but you know, like I told you, they're not what most people think. It's not like you're grabbing a phone from the pulga or somewhere where you know it's been used and touched in all kinds of ways. That's not what those products are. So, um, and besides, you know, if you really think about it, when you buy a phone, and let's say the phone you break it or it's completely shattered beyond repair, they'll actually replace it with another phone. Well, when they replace it, you're not getting a brand new phone. You're getting a refurbished phone. They're not giving you a brand new phone. They're giving you a refurbished phone. So that refurbished product has to work like a brand new product. So it's just a couple of things I wanted to mention because I know that there's some skepticism out there when it comes to refurbished products, and some people actually shy away from that. So it's something that I just wanted to mention. Let's go ahead and look at some iPhones. I know I saw these earlier and they caught my attention. I mean, I know that the latest iPhone, I think, is what, a 13 or a 14? I've lost track. But basically, you know, those are just the phones that have been released. But, you know, there still are phones out there, iPhones out there that are worth looking into. A lot of them are refurbished. But, you know, you've got, you know, some iPhone 13s right now that, you know, through AT&T that you can get, you know, for as low as $27 a month. You know, there's nothing wrong with owning a lesser model. I mean, let's face it. You know, the phone really hasn't changed in the cell phone hasn't changed in the last, you know, 10, 15 years. Just because you have the latest and greatest iPhone or the latest and greatest Samsung phone or any Android phone for that matter, they still make the same calls. It's the same way with the same clarity. There is no difference between those products, whether you have the latest model or a model or two below it. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, You may have a different kind of bezel, maybe a thinner footprint. You may have maybe a better camera as far as megapixels. But to be quite honest with you, for anybody that really knows photography or has some experience with photography, knows that for the most part, anything beyond 6 megapixels in general is just gravy. Uh, your picture is not going to get any better beyond that. So as much as people like to talk, well, my phone is 6 megapixels or 8 megapixels or 10 megapixels. Whoopee! I mean, your pictures are not going to come out any more clear. But people are gullible, and they fall into this trap that they've got to get that iPhone because it's got this better camera. Like if your selfies are going to look better, or your actual videos are going to look better. I mean, for one thing, let's say you get something that can do 4K. Well, you're quickly going to find out that the larger your video, as far as resolution goes, the larger the file size. So you're not going to be able to transmit those photos over Bluetooth. You're going to have to hook up a cable and try to get those. And by the way, if you want to go post those on Facebook, well, you're not going to be able to do that because there's file limitations. So, yeah, you've got a cell phone, the latest and greatest cell phone that can, take pictures as great as the Hubble telescope. But so what? You're not going to be able to view them on Facebook. You're not going to be able to send them quickly to your relatives. The files are just too large. So it's lunacy. But people want to have the latest and greatest. I mean, maybe it's all about being hip more than anything else. Oh, I've got to have that iPhone because otherwise I'm not going to be cool. But technically speaking, there really is no difference. But they've got some deals out there back again on some of the older product lines. Anything from 7s to XRs. I've seen a few 12s out there and definitely 13s. So there's nothing wrong, like I said, with owning a lesser model. Now, I'm not going to tell you to go get yourself an iPhone 3 or a 3GS. One of the things you're going to run into is that they're not going to run the latest and greatest iOS. iOS is the mobile operating system for the iPhones, and so Apple has been known to slow down the iPhone batteries on older models, particularly to get you to go and buy yourself a new one. So there are some disadvantages of owning an older model, but I'm talking like a really old one, not something that was last year's model. So they've got some pretty good deals out there. They've got an XR. Of course, that is through this Walmart family plan. I don't know too much about that family plan. I will say that the other cell phone company they typically push is Straight Talk, and I was pretty impressed with Straight Talk, believe it or not. I think it was pretty comparable to some of the prepaid carriers out there. Well, Straight Talk is a prepaid carrier, but they're kind of like considered the low end of the prepaid carriers. If you're looking at Cricket or some of those, they're kind of like more at the high end, believe it or not, of the prepaid carriers. But I don't know much about the Walmart family plan, but quite honestly, it's not like the cell phone companies own the cell towers. They don't. So, they basically lease those towers. And so most companies out there have coverage just about everywhere in the United States. You don't run into those kind of issues like you did back in the old days where there was distinct coverage by cell phone company. That's not the case anymore because they don't own their cell phone towers. They're owned and managed by somebody else. They lease those so that they can have enough coverage. It's expensive to own and install that kind of equipment. So these days, people say, oh, well, I like Sprint. Well, oh, I like T-Mobile. Well, oh, I like AT&T. Well, oh, I like Cricket. Well, oh, I like whoever, quite frankly, they're all using the same network. It just depends on the frequency and the bandwidth and who's allowed to do what. But it's all coming from the same pipeline. Just people don't realize that, and I've heard people say, well, no, I left so and so because I didn't have good coverage, or I got into this one because they had better coverage. Well, quite frankly, you're an idiot, because uh, they're all they're all they're all using the same cell phone antennas and coverage. So if you don't get coverage from one company, chances are you ain't gonna get coverage from the others. It's just a psychological thing. They still have the trusty old 6S's out there. Very surprising. I mean, it's a it's a reliable phone. I've actually have one here that I've actually converted into a webcam. The 6S makes a great webcam using some software technology. So instead of buying a webcam, you can actually use an old cell phone that has a better camera than some of your webcams. Just some food for thought for some of you who want to play around with old cell phone technology, and what you can use it for second purpose use. So I worked for a place that had tons of iPhone 7s, and they work great. I mean, they're cheap. I mean, if you're looking for a phone for your 5-year-old kid or a 7-year-old kid, and you don't want to get them the latest and greatest because you think that if they're going to break it, well, just get them a cheap phone. If they break it, it's not going to hurt your budget. It's not going to hurt you personally. So just get them a cheap phone. They'll do fine. They'll provide the same babysitting services that a more expensive phone will. So I mean, these days they're all considered electronic babysitters anyway. So they've got the 11s out here, still out here dangling for like $800. Of course, it's a prepaid phone. Um, so they've got some pretty good deals out there. That you may want to consider if you're a big Apple fan. I mean, if you drink that Apple Kool-Aid day in and day out, if you believe that Steve Jobs dropped out of heaven and was the best thing since sliced bread. If you're the big Apple Kool-Aid drinker, well, more power to you. You've got some options here that you can look at. So they've got some pretty good deals. Like I said, Straight Talk, they've got this XS, 64 gigabyte. They've got an iPhone 7 over there for like $249. You buy some of those cheap things, and in a year you could upgrade to what used to be the latest and greatest. It just doesn't always have to be the top end stuff, guys. So um, you've got that. Looking for an iPad, as I said last night, the iPad is the supreme laptop. I mean, tablet. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Apple iPad pretty much reigns supreme when it comes to tablet use. The Apple ecosystem has thousands and thousands of applications, and they all work the same way. One of the things that I'll give Apple credit is basically their strict control over their ecosystem. Basically, it doesn't matter whether the application runs on an iPad 10-inch, a 12-inch, an 11-inch, or even the iPad mini. It all runs the same way. There's no difference. That's something different than what happens on the Android side. I mean, there's some nice Android tablets out there, but one of the problems that, at least on the Android side, has been prevalent has been the inability to create a piece of software that works around different screen resolutions and screen sizes. Um, that's a very big problem, and then unlike Apple, which may have 2 or 3, maybe 4 models out there in a given year, software developers are able to program for those 4 different models the same way. Well, on the Android side, you've got different models and different manufacturers and different screen sizes. So for somebody to create a game or an application and expect it to work the same way on a Samsung or an LG or a Motorola, it's difficult because they don't all work the same way and the screens are not the same way. So when it comes to software uniformity, Apple's got a leg up on the competition. There's no doubt about that. So basically, I mean, they've got the Apple iPad Pro 12 inch, and basically with that one, it's the top of the line model. You can hook up a keyboard and a pen, and it can really function like a laptop. In fact, that is the goal that Apple has in mind. Is eventually they're going to transform all the products to use a single platform, which we believe it'll be iOS or iPad iOS. It used to be called iOS, but it's now called iPad OS. And so the goal behind it is to unify all the products under one operating system. In fact, I believe that eventually even the Mac will basically be transformed to use iPad OS. I mean, one of the things that most of you know today is that Apple has failed to make touch a function on the Mac. They came up with that funny touch bar a few years ago, one of their models, but it definitely wasn't touch. And for whatever reason, they have not been able to get the Mac operating system to go touch. And I don't think they have, for the reason is that their future really belongs to iPad OS. And I think that's where they're headed. I think the Mac eventually will go away once some of these iPads are as strong performance-wise as a Mac laptop. So, for those of you out there who are purchasing Macs today, don't hold on to them too long, because I think eventually they'll be replaced with the iPad completely. So, but they've, like, once again, the iPad 12 is definitely definitely the top of the line model if you're looking for something where you're doing a little bit of creativity, artwork and things like that. They've got an 11-inch model as well. I think it was this year's model. You can also add a keyboard and a pen. They've also got the 10-inch models, which you can add a keyboard and a pen as well. And of course, I've seen these iPad Minis firsthand. I'm not really a big fan of the iPad Mini. It's kind of small, but some people like them. It's somewhere between a 6-inch phone and a 9-inch tablet. It's kind of like in between. I think it's about 7 inches or so. So, some people like that, like that size, and they feel comfortable with it. So, you've got some options there, and they're not too bad. I mean, you can get one for, $500 or so. I mean, they actually are great babysitters as well. So. It's just something to kind of look at if you're looking for an iPad there. And let's go ahead and look at what they've got for laptops. Let's see, in the world of laptops, what deals they've got going on there. Well, look at that. For anybody who's wanting a Apple MacBook Air, and obviously this is an older model, it's the Retina display, but it comes with like 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD hard drive. You're looking at about $328. I mean, that is quite a deal. I don't remember if the MacBook Air that my daughter has, whether it's an 11-inch or a 13-inch, but I think I paid a lot more than $300 for that MacBook, but that's not a bad little deal. I mean, my only concern obviously is the 4 gigs and the 128 gigs of RAM. That is pretty substandard today for most devices. So I wouldn't settle for anything less than 8 and maybe 256 gigs in total. I guarantee you that when you turn that computer on, you're not going to have 128 gigs. You'll be lucky to have 90 because they preload the computers with all kinds of software that you probably may never use. You can remove it, but once again, regardless of the hard drive and the capacity of the hard drive, you're never going to get the full capacity. So if you go out there and buy yourself a terabyte SSD drive today, thinking that you're going to have access to a full terabyte, that's not going to happen. Basically, you install the hard drive and then you load the software, and we're talking the basic operating system, and that's going to take a chunk off the 1 terabyte. So you may be less than what you anticipated when it comes to the hard drive. So it's just something to think about as you're buying computers. If you're looking at a laptop or a computer that has 500 gigs, you need to keep in mind that you're not going to have access to those 500 gigs. If you're getting something with a terabyte or 2 terabytes, well, once again, you're not going to get access to the full 2 terabytes. You're going to lose storage as the computer is preloaded with the software to make it run. So just something to be aware of. But definitely 4 gigs is really, really at the low end today. I'm not really sure how that would function with some of those things today. But they've got some computers out there, even on the Windows side. They've got some Lenovo's out there that are like based on an i3 processor, and they got 4 gigs of RAM. Look at that. It's $399. I mean, if I had my choice between this one and this one, I'd pick the MacBook if you're going to spend that kind of money. I will tell you, you should really shy away from any computer that sports a Celeron processor. The Celeron processor is a very cheap processor. It's a very slow processor. I do not know if they're dual core or whether they're quad core. But regardless of whether they're dual core, quad core, single core, any computer out there with a Celeron processor, you're not going to get very far with it. I mean, you might as well consider that to be an internet device, kind of like Chromebook, because that's all you're going to be able to use it for. You're not going to be able to do any kind of gaming or anything like that whatsoever. So I kind of shy away from the Celeron based systems out there that are still out there. There's not very many, and I wouldn't waste my time buying one. So let's see here. I've owned an Acer, and I will tell you that the Acer product is a very good product. I actually own 2 machines that have Asus motherboards built in. I actually built those machines myself, and Asus really does put out a great product as far as that goes. If you're into gaming, but you don't want to get yourself a gaming desktop, one of your options that you have is to get yourself a gaming laptop. Well, gaming laptops are not going to be ultra thin, and they're not going to be 11, 12, or 13 or 14 inches. Chances are, you're going to find some that are 15.6 inch displays, and you're going to most of the gaming laptops are 17 inch laptops. So you're not gonna want anything less than a 15 inch display on a laptop if you're going to go out and play with your friends somewhere, or if you're into those gaming tournaments or stuff like that where you want portability. You want to get yourself at least a laptop with a decent screen. I mean, the last thing you want to do is show up with even a flat screen monitor. That would be kind of weird. But one of the things that I will talk about is the graphics capability on these machines, as well as any gaming system out there today. I recently learned that it does matter whether you have a good video display card versus one that's built in. And what I've come to recognize is that the NVIDIA product is anything with a NVIDIA video card built in uh, is probably a good gaming system. You're not going to run into latency issues that you do if you buy an AMD or an Intel based processor with built-in graphics. You're not gonna get the NVIDIA product in those CPUs. You're basically going to get the Radeon product, and I'm not knocking Radeon, but when it comes to graphics cards, there's nothing like NVIDIA. Now, the only thing I will say about this MSI gaming piece laptop is it is based on the i5 processor. But beyond that, what kind of bugs me a little bit is 8 gigs of RAM and only 256 gigabytes of hard drive space. Uh, 8 gigs, you may be able to get by, but you're better off getting 16 if you can, 32 if you can afford it. Um, and definitely 256 gigabytes won't last you very long. You want to at least try to get 500 gigabytes or even a terabyte or so for a hard drive. That's not to say you can't upgrade those. You can get this cheaper laptop, and then you can buy yourself an SSD with, either 500 gigs or a terabyte or 2 terabytes, and just plug it in. Most of them are pretty easy to install. You don't necessarily have to go out to the Geek Squad and pay them $90 an hour for a simple hard drive upgrade. I think it's something that most people that are living and breathing should be able to do fairly easily. But you can screw it up. I will tell you that if you're not careful or you don't know what you're doing, you can literally screw it up. But hey, if you feel that the Geek Squad can help you out, more power to you. Go out there, spend your $90 an hour. I guarantee you'll come out of there with at minimum 4 hours of work. Or they'll charge you 4 hours of work, even though it only took them like 20 minutes. But it's just something that I wanted to mention. But definitely, a gaming laptop is something you want to consider if you're a true gamer. Well, obviously, if you're a true gamer, you're going to always use a desktop. Okay, but if you want that kind of portability and you want to be able to go out and play somewhere else, then yeah, I mean, a gaming laptop is something worth considering. Let's see what else there is out here. Chromebooks. I'll talk a little bit about Chromebooks. I know they were pretty popular, about 2 years ago before the pandemic. It looked there for a while that they were going to take the low end market of laptops. If you want to consider them laptops, I can't really consider them laptops. Maybe they're sub laptops, but basically a Chromebook is a dumbed down device. It's that's what it is. It's a dumbed down device. You can't really do real work. You can't really run Microsoft Office for those that are part of the 99% of the world that uses Microsoft Office. You're not gonna be able to use that. You're basically tied to Google's ecosystem, which includes Gmail, Google Docs, Google Sheets, all those suite of products that are manufactured by Google. And if you're into that, that's great. I mean, if the majority of what you do is on the internet and it's browser based, and you don't have to think about video editing or huge number crunching or music composition, then a Chromebook may be fine for you. But in my opinion, you can't do real work. They're just internet access devices to access web-based applications. But beyond that, if you're thinking that a Chromebook will be the same thing as a Windows laptop, nah, you're wrong. There is quite a big difference. If you think that a Chromebook is comparable to a MacBook, you're definitely wrong. There is no comparison between real laptops and these uh, other devices. But they were popular at one time, and they were making some inroads into education. Especially for school districts that are cash strapped and they can't afford, laptops for every student. It was very enticing to look at these Chromebooks because for 100 to 150 bucks, you get yourself a 30 of these devices, and basically, give every kid a an opportunity to use a machine on the internet. So I can understand why there was that attraction to the Chromebook, but you quickly discovered that these are underpowered devices. They have very little memory, almost zero storage. The webcams are the old 640 by 480 resolution. They're nowhere near any megapixel whatsoever. So when you're doing a Zoom conference or whatever, your video looks very grainy, and that's because it's a cheap ass camera that's on a Chromebook with very little memory, very little storage. Now, some may argue, well, we don't need storage because we can store everything on Google Cloud. Well, yeah, you could do that, but the problem is that Google's not going to give you unlimited storage. So if you're storing all these documents and you're storing all these pictures, guess what? Eventually you're going to run out of space and you're going to have to dish out some casholia over to Google for some extra space. So, yeah, I mean, yes, you could store everything on the cloud, and believe me, I think that we all should by far store everything on the cloud, because the moment that you lose that device or you lose that laptop, and if you're one of those individuals who stores everything on the laptop, well, once you lose it, it's gone. You can't get it back, at least not easily, and at least not cheaply. So if you save your documents on Google Drive, or you save them under OneDrive on Microsoft, or you subscribe to Dropbox, you've got a central place where you store all your files, your pictures, your videos, whatever you've got, right on those cloud drives. And regardless of what machine you're on, whether it's your own personal machine from home, a computer at work, or even a tablet or a phone, as long as you've got that OneDrive app or that Google Drive app, or that Dropbox app, you're going to have access to those files, and you can recall them, edit them, save them, do whatever you want with them. So I am a big fan of uh, of cloud storage. I'm just not a fan of these devices, these cheap ass devices out there, that are sold on the premise that they're just as good as laptops, because they're not. They're not as good as laptops. They'll never be as good as laptops. So, quite frankly, for anybody looking for a laptop, don't even think about getting a Chromebook. You'll be wasting your money. Um, that's just something that I want to talk about a little bit. Once again, some of these older refurbished Macs. I mean, uh, they're Intel based. Let me talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the Mac world, because most of you don't know this, or maybe you did, but for at least 10, 12 years, the Macintosh product line actually ran under an Intel processor. Prior to that, Apple licensed chips from Motorola, and they were based on the 68,000 processor. And it quite became apparent as the 90s came to a close that the Apple Macintosh was not going to do very well unless they moved to one of their platforms. So they went over and contracted with Intel to provide the actual processors for the next line Mac devices out there, and they did it for about 10 or 12 years. One of the funny things about that is that when that conversion happened, uh, it became quite easy for an Apple MacBook or an Apple Mac to actually use a Windows software because they were running the same CPUs. And so it was easy for software developers to actually create software applications on both products. In fact, uh, you could easily create a Hackintosh, which was you could run Apple software on a Windows PC and vice versa. Well, I really don't know the whole story. My buddy Doug, which is Apple guru, and hopefully he'll one day come on the show if he decides to. I'd love to have him. He drinks all the Apple Kool-Aid out there, and he knows everything about Macs. But one of the things that happened with the Macintosh line was that Intel started doing some finagling with Apple, where you would get Intel-based processors for the Windows side, which were faster and gigahertz-wise and core-wise than what was coming out for the Mac. Now, whether that was intentional to keep the Mac suppressed, I'm not know. I'd have to ask my good friend Doug about that. I'm sure he's got some opinions as to why Intel held back on providing the latest and greatest processors. There is also a school of thought out there that, Apple was more interested in a more efficient, more low power based processor based on 7 nanometer chip technology. And up until today, Intel is not able to put out a 7 nanometer chip for whatever reason. And I think part of it is because they sold their foundries. Chip manufacturing facilities are called foundries, and basically, just like any manufacturing plant, they're tooled and geared to build a specific product. People don't realize that, for example, in an automotive manufacturing plant, the automotive manufacturing plant is tooled for a specific car model. They can't build another car model easily in that factory because all the tools on the assembly line are geared towards a specific model. And that's the same thing with electronics. When I've worked in manufacturing in the electronics industry and in automotive, and I can tell you that, changing lines in and out is not something that's easy to do. When I worked for a cable set-top manufacturer many years ago, each line on that manufacturing plant was geared towards a specific set-top box or receiver. It wasn't like you could switch out back and forth. And that's the same thing with some of these computer products. You just can't switch that stuff out from night to day. Oh, today I'm going to build this model, or today I'm going to build that model. It just doesn't work that way. But a lot of people don't know that. They think it's like changing underwear, but that's just not what happens. And so there was a school of thought out there saying that Intel was holding back on Apple because they didn't want Apple to have the latest and greatest chips. I don't know if that's true. But nevertheless, Apple switched out to license the CPU designs from ARM. And ARM is a licensed technology by a company called ARM that's been around since the 1980s. In fact, the ARM-based processor called the M1 that's on an Apple product is called the RISC-based processor. And there's two types of processors out there. One is called the CISC processor, and one is called the RISC processor. And RISC stands for Reduced Instruction Set Computing. And the CISC processor, which is what Intel is based on, is called Common Instruction Set Computing. And there's differences in speed and so forth and efficiency. And for many, many years, it's always been known that your RISC-based processors are more efficient and they're faster and so forth. And so Apple made an effort within the last 2 or 3 years to move over to the RISC-based ARM processor, which is their M1. They've licensed the technology. They didn't come up with the design themselves. They'll make you think that, but they really got the designs from ARM. ARM is the patent holder to reduced instruction set computing. And so they've licensed that technology and they've built upon it. I mean, it gives them the ability to upgrade and do improvements to that technology, but they're basically still having to license it from somebody else. But nevertheless, they moved over to the M1 Silicon processor. And as a result of that, software developers now have to rebuild their software applications to run under this Silicon M1. I think there's even an M1X now out there. So a lot of your big applications, especially your Adobe products, I think even Microsoft put out an Office version for the M1 processor. Those are already there. I believe they were there since day one. But some of your other software developers, still are going through the process of converting their software titles over to the M1. So it's something that and the reason I've gotten on this soapbox about the M1 and versus the Intel side of the Mac versus the M1 side of the Mac is it really makes no sense today to purchase a Mac that's Intel based. And the reason for that is because there's not going to be any more new software being released under the Intel platform. So if you buy one of these cheap Macintoshes today, and I'm actually going to bite my tongue now because I just was telling you to go get yourself an Intel-based Mac for like $300, but that's throwaway money. I mean, if you really think about it, a cheap Mac at $300, you might as well consider that throwaway money because that's what it is. I mean, for the basic internet stuff and stuff like that, maybe some music composition, that'll work fine. It'll probably work well for a couple of years. But the reality of it is that you want to get yourself a Mac that is now based on the M1 processor. That is the future. You're not going to see any more Intel-based Macintoshes be released. I think there may be one or two models out there, but you're not going to see that. So honestly, if you're looking for a super duper Mac, I know there may be one or two still out there on the Apple product line that are Intel based, but don't bother with them. Get yourself a brand new M1 or M1X based Apple Silicon based MacBook. I think you'll be much more happier with it. You'll definitely have great battery life, power efficiency. I mean, like I said, it's just that's something I just wanted everyone to be aware of, especially as we're headed into the holidays and you see all these sales coming out, for a Mac. You don't want to get yourself a Mac cheaply and then find out that there's no software for it. I mean, it's like the same thing for the video game systems. You definitely can't run PS2 games on a PS3. You can't run a PS3 on a PS4, and you may not be able to run stuff from a PS4 to a PS5 easily. So if you find some cheap ass device out there on eBay, that's maybe a PS3 or a PS2, you're just wasting your money, because if you go over to GameStop, you're not going to find anything for it. I mean, you may find it in the $1 section if those still exist. I don't think they ever had $1, maybe $5 section, but you're really not going to find anything for it. So don't even waste your money. Right now, video game systems, kind of jumping up ahead a little bit, but video game systems right now are hard to find because of the chip shortage. So you're not going to find the latest and greatest Xbox. You're not going to find the PS5 this Christmas on most store shelves. If you're lucky to get one, you'll be one of the lucky ones, but those are not going to be around on the shelves. But for anybody shopping out there for some other low-end model, and the PS4 will be a low-end model for those people out there who own PS4s. I'm not knocking it. I'm just telling you that that's old technology, and eventually once we get past this chip shortage, there'll be plenty of PS5s, and you're gonna quickly find out that most of your game software titles out there are pretty much going to be for the PS5 and the new Xbox. They're not going to be for the older stuff. Now, I will give Microsoft some credit, though. And what they've done is they've worked very hard at backward compatibility, which means that anything for the Xbox One will run on the latest and greatest Xbox One. I think, is it S? I believe it's S, or whatever it is. One of them is like full 4K and the other one isn't. I don't know which one's which, but if you have a game that runs on the Xbox One, it's going to run on the latest model. Of course, the games that are released, I've seen some games out there on the Xbox released for the S, but you can actually play them on a regular Xbox One. They'll just dumb it down somewhat so you can play it. So I will give Microsoft credit for that. They've made great strides in trying to provide some kind of backward compatibility and forward compatibility. It kind of sucks when you go buy yourself a gaming system and then the next couple of months, 6 years, a year from now, you find out that they released a super duper new one, and then you're kind of kicking yourself because you spend like $300, $400, $500 on this machine, and you've also bought all these accessories, and you've got an investment in all kinds of games and stuff like that, and now your machine's obsolete. It's not the coolest thing on earth. So I will give them credit for that. At least you can play your machine a little bit more, and you've kind of keep your investment a little bit more. But overall, like I said, it is what it is. I mean, we all know that in tech, if you think you're going to buy something and it's going to be super duper for a while, as soon as you turn it on after you take it home, it's going to be obsolete. It's kind of like a car. A brand new car, when you roll it off the car dealer, it loses $5,000 in value automatically as soon as you walk off the dealership. So it's kind of the same thing. That's why a lot of times I believe that you're better off buying the previous model, or maybe the previous model before that, because at least that it's not the latest and greatest. It's been bug free. It's been, put through hell and back as far as making it work. And a lot of times when you get something that's brand new that just comes out, there's bugs and all kinds of problems. So you end up being somebody else's guinea pig, after a while, or laboratory rat as a process. So yeah, I mean, going back to this, and I kind of, I apologize for going on and on and on without going through the products, but there's a lot to be said out there, and there's a lot of confusion when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I just want to kind of tap that, especially as the holidays are rolling through. So I mean, there's some products out there. I mean, there's some laptops out there. Obviously, HP is a very good manufacturer. I mean, they make great printers, and I've owned a few HP laptops, and I can't say anything bad about them per se. Here you go. Once again, you see these Macs out here for $258. Keep in mind they're Intel based, but once again, it depends what you're using it for. Macs are not great gaming machines. If you think you're gonna get a Mac because you're gonna be a gamer, you might as well move on. Go over to the Windows side, because that's where true gamers are at this point. Even with Silicon, even with the M1 and the M1X, the Mac is not a gaming system. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you'll just be wasting your time. As I mentioned last night, Lenovo is a very good brand. I know several people that have Lenovo products. I actually have a couple of Lenovo monitors that I use, and I've been very impressed with those products. So, for those of you that don't know Lenovo bought the IBM PC company, the makers of the ThinkPad and the old IBM PC line. So when IBM divested of their PC business, they sold it over to Lenovo. And so right now, you have Lenovo IdeaPads and ThinkPads actually running on the International Space Station. So, for those of you that, have kind of shied away from Lenovo, if they're good enough for NASA and the ISS, they should be good enough for you on planet Earth. So it's just something to look at. A couple of more HPs. Like I said, if you're looking for any sort of laptop, 8 gigs is at the tail end. 8 gigs is at the tail end. You really don't want to go less than 8. 16 is better. 32 is even better. Same thing with hard drive space. If you can afford a terabyte, that's the way to go. It just is. I'm not really sure about the Ryzen 3 based processors. I would say that you should consider from an Intel standpoint. If you're looking to get an Intel based laptop, don't settle for anything less than an i5, higher end generation i5, as well as a Ryzen 5. Anything less than that, I would not recommend it. Alrighty, well, actually, it's about an hour and 15 minutes that I've gone through this, and like I said, I had a lot to talk about, but there's definitely some interesting sales over at Walmart. You've got you don't have to necessarily go out there on Friday and freeze your trying to get the latest and greatest deals. You can order them online. You can order them online and pick them up curbside. You've got a couple of options. It isn't like it used to be. So for those of you that want to get something at Walmart, they've got some excellent products out there for Black Friday. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to have another episode, and this time we're going to look at what's out there for Best Buy. And that's going to pretty much cap the show for the remainder of the week. Typically, I'll only have a show probably once a week, but I felt that I needed to at least have 3 shows this week, especially with Black Friday coming up. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to log in and view our show. Like I said, it's not always going to be the same format. It's not always going to be by myself, that's for sure. I am looking for a co-host if anybody's interested in it. It's not going to be a permanent co-host, and I can't promise that you'll be on every time, but I definitely don't want to do this alone. So if anybody out there is interested, they can inbox me at any time. And once again, I thank you for joining me tonight, and we will see you tomorrow. Same time, same channel, and same station, as they used to say in the old Batman movie, at the old Batman TV series back in the 60s. By the way, I wasn't even alive back then, for anybody that is wondering. I just used to watch reruns. So, all right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.